This is going to be a deep dive into the relationship between Louis and Lestat. Is it peak romance or pathological manipulation? Or both?
Both is good.
Interview with the Vampire is Louis' version of events, but it's the only truth we know going into the show. As the story unfolds and we unpack his trauma, we start to see cracks in his story. Was it raining, Louis? Was it?
Let the tale seduce you.
We get to go back to the 1910s and watch Louis and Lestat's love story from the beginning. We get to see Louis the man, the origins of him becoming a vampire, and the showrunner's decision to race-band Louis has truly enriched the story. We've got New Orleans, this wonderful backdrop, and it's such a juxtaposition that you've got this stunning landscape, which is deeply troubled.
Decades of Jim Crow had vanquished any idea of a free man of color.
The jobs were heavily exploitative, low paying, so there was no choice but to look for these other means to survive. And that's how we've got Louis as a pimp, which when we think about it, we're obviously like, ooh, morality of that. That's so wrong. But we can understand Louis' plight in this situation. We've got systemic oppression, and then he's also part of a marginalized community which would look down on his sexuality. He's got a conservative Catholic mother, a religious fanatic brother, and then on top of all of that, he meets Lestat. Literally love at first sight. There's desire, there's intrigue. It's a bit predator prey. And that is how Louis poses it. He says, I was being hunted. But from Lestat's perspective, it was probably different. And that's one thing I hope for in season 3. I would love to go back to New Orleans and see it from Lestat's perspective. Louis like, I was being hunted. Lestat, it's probably a K-drama for him. It's probably like Louis was walking, the like petals falling around him. He saw him like hold that knife to his brother, and he was like, what a man. And as he walked off, there was like music. When we compare, the book and movie are set in the 18th century, and the catalyst for the events that unfold slightly differ. So in the movie, he's lost his wife and child. We get it, he's straight, wife, child. In the book, it's the loss of Paul, blaming himself. What did he say? I lived like a man who wanted to die. So loss of his brother and refusing him, because in the book he refuses Paul some money, and that's what makes him feel this huge amount of guilt. Neither one of those backstories has the oomph to hit the story from the ground running. And then there's the elephant in the room. Book Louis and movie Louis are plantation owners.
What? Pardon me?
It's a big part of the book. Louis discusses the slaves ad nauseum. And I think book purists need to on this one, because there was no need for it. We've evolved past the plantation owner. So let's just move that right along. Yep. This is the thing about different POVs and why it's such an intriguing format of storytelling. Did Lestat already know that Louis was going to be there? Probably. But what he couldn't anticipate was the more he learned about Louis, the more he'd be drawn to him.
You speak French? Your name is Louis. Of course it's Louis.
Lestat's plan was to go to Missouri and live in St. Louis, and he falls in love with a man named Louis.
You're his destiny, Louis.
It's this inescapable love, an obsession that feels kismet from the beginning. Here's a question. Was it love at first sight for Louis too? I know he looks ready to kill, but there's this fine line between love and hate. The feelings that he felt for him at the beginning are quite similar to the feelings that he would have for him at the end.
I wanted to murder the man. I wanted him dead. I wanted him all to myself.
Quite literally identical.
I wanted to take the end of my cane and slit his throat with it.
Their next encounter is at the poker game. Coincidence? I think not. Louis was invited to the poker game by Mr. Anderson the night he met Lestat. There's that possibility Lestat overheard and found a way to get invited too.
You all know Louis did lock.
As if their sexual tension from their first encounter wasn't enough, there's an intensity with which Lestat is transfixed on Louis.
There's capital investment, and there's labor. Wouldn't you say, Mr. Lestat?
Watching him be treated poorly by Mr. Anderson, he uses his gift to speak plainly to him. Do you not know your value? Do you suffer these indignities for some larger purpose? Questions, I believe, Lestat truly wants the answers to. He's intrigued by Louis and wants to know him. Like he said the first night they met, destined to be good friends. And he meant it. That's how he wins Louis over. Just look at Louis biting his lip as Lestat helps him win the game. And we usher in their best friends era, where they spend nearly night after night in each other's company.
I was being hunted.
And you can see it from two sides. Like, which way should we look at it? Is it Lestat biding his time in a predatory type of way in which he's waiting to catch Louis at his most vulnerable? Or is this Lestat falling in love? Is this their courtship? As we see it unfold, we're seeing it from Louis' perspective, but from Lestat, it must have been like this endless yearning and longing and even hunger, because at the time Louis is human. And we see that when Lestat agrees to go to Louis' house. It's like meeting the in-laws, meeting the family. It's very like, oh, I need to offer a dowry for Louis. He goes because he wants to make a good impression. And thus begins the dinner from hell. We've got Louis lying about the opera.
About some blind princess, didn't know she was a princess. Stomach got grumbling, left halfway through.
Which showcases that he has to hide these parts of himself from his family. He can't be truly who he is. He has to feign this idea of like masculinity to put forward. But I can understand why that opera, the story of Yolanta, would have Louis weeping, because it parallels him in a way. Like he said, it's the story of a blind princess who doesn't actually know that she's blind, and she meets this count, and the count falls in love with her at first sight, just like Lestat did with Louis.
You saying I got shamed?
The lie you told about leaving the opera house early. You were near weeping when the curtain fell.
It's the count who helps the princess realize that she's blind. In the story, the count discovers her blindness because he asks her to bring him a red flower, and she gives him a white one. Look at what Lestat is wearing. A white flower. We've got our blind princess, not knowing she's blind, and our count who's going to help the princess come to the realization.
Probably had enough for the night. Gotta make my rounds back on Liberty.
You must, Louis. I bought you a gift.
A gift?
This is where the debate continues. Peak romance, pathological manipulation. Their first night together is perfectly orchestrated by Lestat. He wanted him in this position. He planned for Miss Lily to be there. Like, is this manipulation, or is this just a well thought out date night? I don't know. Which way do you see it? When they do sleep together, it's Louis who goes for the kiss first, and Lestat openly reveals more of his powers to him. I mean, they're floating in the air, for goodness sake. Louis has to know with certainty there's something deeply supernatural about him, but what captures Louis the most is...
But for the feelings of intimacy.
For Louis, although clearly different from his former fumbles, he plans to handle it the same way. Put the night behind him and never see Lestat again. And that's what he does. He goes back to focusing on the family business, focusing on Grace's wedding. There's a stillness since this is Louis' POV. However, if we picture Lestat, he was probably in his townhouse, filled with anger, impatiently waiting. All these feelings boiling up inside him because of Louis' decision to cut him off. From hanging out every night, being around the city together, being best friends, to he never wants to see him again.
I love you, Louis.
I love you too, baby brother.
Paul.
Paul! Paul!
Paul's death is really a turning point for Louis. We see his family turn against him, and I would say Grace turns against him too. Like, just silently complicit in the way that Louis' mother is treating him. The blame that he gets for something that was out of his control. And yes, his mother needs some place to put it, but you don't put it on your child. You don't put it on your son. It's not fair. It's not something that Louis should have to shoulder, nor is it something he clearly is able to. And Grace just doesn't have to suffer. She's got her I guess, yeah, she's married at that point. She's got her husband right next to her. Meanwhile, Louis is suffering and alone in his grief. Enter Lestat.
An elegant coffee. Would you tell me where you purchased?
Move on.
I wait on my balcony every night. You've been avoiding me.
The devastation, it causes that vulnerability and that weakness, that crack in his armor for Lestat to take advantage. And that's where we see that fine line that we're dancing between. Is it Louis' choice, or has he been coerced into what has taken place between the two of them?
What'd you say to me?
The night of the funeral, we see Louis trying to be present.
I could not join the transformation of those in attendance. He would not let me.
Come to me.
And he just can't think of anything else. He wants to go again with his family. His family is just like, no. He's just plagued by it. So then he tries to go and seek out Miss Lily. And that is another thing that Lestat thwarts. He's trying to isolate him so that Louis has nowhere to turn. Because that night, he would have gone to Miss Lily and done what he always does, just talk to her. But Lestat has cut it off. He's like, no, I don't want you to be able to find solace in anybody but me. And then even after finding out Miss Lily is dead and probably understanding, more than probably, he understands that Lestat did it, he goes to another place. Like, he still doesn't go to Lestat. He still tries to go to a different avenue to get comfort. He goes to what a lot of people go to when the chips are down completely and they don't know what else to do. They just cry out to God. And so he goes to church and he's knocking on the door and he's begging. He wants help.
Help me, please. He's in my head, Father.
All these things come out of Louis, the truth of how he feels. And can he find peace there? No. Lestat follows him there too. He stalks him there and he takes away, literally rips away his last piece of comfort. And in that moment, he forces him to make a life-changing decision. Is that how other people see it? When you rewatch that scene, do you think, wow, he came to him in his hour of need? Or do you think he isolated him and took away any other resources that he could have had? I would love to know how people see it, because there's that element in their relationship where in the chaos and the madness of it all, you're like, wow, it really is just Louis and Lestat against the world. Or has Lestat designed it that way so that Louis has no one else?
I lay down with the devil.
When Louis is giving his confessional, Lestat can hear everything he's saying. And is that the reason for his extremely violent reaction, being called the devil? It's something he struggles with. We saw it at the family dinner from hell,
Don't do that shit here.
where Lestat wanted to impress, but he has this visceral reaction when religion comes up. Religious trauma is no joke, and we know Lestat has a lot of religious trauma. So watching Louis go to church, go to the priest, and Lestat can read minds, so who knows what's going on behind the scenes with those priests. Sorry, Father Matthias, I was rooting for you. I thought you were a good guy. But yeah, he reacts so strongly because of what he has been through, and he doesn't want to see Louis bowing down to anybody. He doesn't want him bowing down to the businessmen, the church people.
This primitive country has picked you clean.
He's like, this is beneath you, and he's just so angry. And then we go from violence to I love you.
I love you, Louis. You are loved.
Wedding altar kiss. I pronounce you failed marriage. And in the books, the vampires, they couldn't have sex. So their intimacy came from that vampire bite. And the scene is very similar. It's very intense. We've got Lestat like falling back. It's very a euphoric moment. It's sexually charged. And the lines that Louis says, correct me if I'm wrong, they're exactly the same from the book about the beating of the heart, the drum.
And it was then that I realized the drum was my heart. And the other drum had been his.
What does that mean for Daniel and Armand? Oh my gosh, their relationship. I can't wait to get into that either, but that is for another time. So the book came out in the 70s and then the movie adaptation in 1997.
Wrong answer, forehead.
So gay vampires weren't going to be marketable. They weren't overtly going to be able to say that's the relationship between the two of them. So it's in the ambiguity of that bite, the love, the power, the struggle, the dominance, the seduction. Even when Dracula came out, which was in 1897, it was very taboo, it was risque. I think there were rumors that it was going to or had been banned in Ireland, but I don't think that ever officially happened. It was never officially banned, but it was that type of book where everyone thought it was challenging norms when it came to sex and power. It was like, oh, this is subverting the norms. This isn't what it's supposed to be for. Sex is for reproduction. How dare you? Clutching their pearls. Because in Dracula, we know Count Dracula's bite, it's all about that seduction. It's about lust, and those were things that they weren't going to be comfortable with in the Victorian age. Is it the Victorian? It has to be the Victorian age. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll put a little asterisk, just like ding ding. If I'm right, I'll give myself a thumbs up. In episode 2, we're back with Louis in the present tense, and his whole demeanor is so different from his past self. It's almost like it's a facade, as though it's for show. He wants everything to be so controlled, from the interview, the gloomy apartment, to the 100-course Henry VIII meal that he's prepared for Daniel. It's like he needs everything to be in this specific way. And even the way he dresses, it's so dull. He's in black, like it's funeral attire, whereas we know in the past he used to dress so it was colorful. There was so much life to it. And so for him to claim that he's a man who's found peace, it doesn't really look like it at all. I'm going to tell my story because I'm in a much better place. No, you need therapy, Louis. And Daniel is your unwilling, unqualified counselor who also needs therapy too. Everyone in that apartment needs therapy. Armand, and even you too, Rashid. So he takes us back to 1910s, and Louis, poor Louis, has that instant regret. He wants to go back to his normal life, and Lestat lets Louis find out the hard way that going back isn't going to happen. The wedding continues as he bridal carries him upstairs. It makes sense that for Louis, this would be his coming out, that he would see it that way, because prior to that, he'd only had a few fumbles with guys. So we've got the wedding altar kiss, the bridal carry, the sleeping together naked. I mean, his coming out was literally going into the coffin with Lestat. That's when it officially happened for him. It was like, this is going to be my life now. This is what it is. And he was like, in the quiet of the dark, we were equals, which Daniel quickly dispelled. He's like, equals?
White master, black student, but equal in the quiet dark.
Disrespecting me. How did he do that? He told me I did a good job.
You are a library of confusion.
And these are layers we really see coming to the surface with the two of them, because Lestat just has this inability to understand that their different life experiences will cause them to have different ways in which they approach eternity.
To stop using that word right now, because it sounded a little like slave. Well, that's what it fucking sound like.
For people who are hardcore Lestat fans, when I do lurk, sometimes there are some people, and I say some, who have this inability just to have an open, transparent discussion when it comes to race and what it means for Louis and Lestat's relationship and Lestat's specific role in the things that happen that are related to race. It just gets so much defense on a show which is just so broad and open and amazing. It's like, I don't know how sometimes, I guess you can't control who watches what, but how the thought processes of people who are watching it, I'm like a bit like,
Well, you really do have a mind inside that head of yours, don't you?
I know some of the finishes.
He's trying to ignore the ignorant comments, and I love it. That's the interesting dimensions that we get with Louis. Like, he tries to swallow it down, but he's come to this realization. He's like, absolutely not.
Yeah, bright and industrious, huh?
I'm certain watching this, there were other black viewers who just could relate to those microaggressions, those backhanded compliments. I can't even call them compliments. It's just a backhand. And Louis just really sitting there like, what? Did he really just? But now he can actually do something about it. So I root for Louis. Like Louis's greatest hits. Like, he has the most justifiable homicides out there. But when he takes on the task of murdering someone, you're like, yes, get him.
Get him again. Get him for me.
I want to pause on that issue with Louis's kill to pull in yet another example of Louis's inability to break ties with the human world.
Some fashion, certain men like him do, Lord.
Oh, dysfunction at its finest. He gets there, his mother's insulting him, and then asking why he doesn't come around very often. Like, yeah, because it's going to be the same thing every time he gets there. And like he said, your legs work, my legs work, why don't you come and see me? And when we think about it, like, we can say that Lestat violently snatched him from his life, but what was his life? This would have been, if Louis had a normal mortal life, this would have been it. His mother continuously picking at him, knowing that he is different, and him trying to cover that up while she still judges him anyway, and providing for Grace and Levy and them off having children, and him not truly ever having a life of his own. What life would it have been? I mean, again, it's Louis's decision either way, but it works in tandem to be able to see Louis's perspective, but then also understand Lestat in his mind of what he's giving to Louis. Through death, he's giving him life. Back to their original conflict.
Well, what can I do to make it up to you?
How can I say no to you?
Lestat, like with his advice about Louis's family, says human business is a bad idea, but he still supports it. Lestat is trying to give Louis what he wants. Why? Because he loves him. He even attends a family function with him. But is he feeling that love is reciprocated? Louis's family visit goes horribly wrong, just like Lestat told him it would. And Louis's response is,
Ain't never gonna have a family of my own, am I? No sons, no daughters.
I believe this is an example of Louis's POV being clouded, or us only seeing part of the story, because Lestat is yearning for Louis to truly be with him.
I'm your family, Louis.
And Louis just doesn't fully see it. You can catch those moments, though, if you're watching closely. It's further illustrated in this scene.
So that as I sat there trying to practice restraint, simmering in my indignation, Lestat seized it as opportunity to disarm me.
I think for me, at least, early on there were discrepancies between what Louis was saying and what we were actually seeing. So when they go on their honeymoon and Louis says, Lestat used this as a moment to disarm him, I didn't see it that way at all. I think Lestat could see he was in pain in that moment, that he was upset and frustrated by what he had just faced, the ignorance. And this was Lestat taking a moment to empathize with him, to comfort him by revealing his greatest fear.
There's one thing about being a vampire that I most fear above all else, and that is loneliness. You take this feeling away from me, Louis.
And this is what I'm talking about, the perspectives, the discrepancies, right there, even there, he's like,
And this woman sang for us, it seemed, articulating the difficult love we often had trouble expressing ourselves.
Not true. Not true at all. Lestat has no problem articulating how he feels about Louis. It's Louis who struggles to articulate how he feels. Case and point.
There was one issue that threatened to pop the bubble of our Italian holiday, and that was the tenor.
But Lestat's violence and vampire nature rears its ugly head. This was supposed to be a romantic holiday, and you brought business on the trip? Oh, Lestat, you were doing so well. And then it flips that equal footing thing that Louis had said on its head. Again, another thing he might be wrong about, because are you really equal? Can he be your master in that way and you still consider yourself equal to him? Because does he have any power or control in this moment? Are you on equal footing as this is happening?
Why do you do this, Lestat?
Well, I like to do it. I enjoy it.
Well, I don't. You don't have to humiliate him. Well, I don't say that you have to enjoy it!
We know Louis struggles with his emotions, struggles with being a depressed vampire, and I think feeling that he's inadequate in both ways, that he can never be a vampire like Lestat, he will never enjoy the kill, the hunt, but he can't go back to being a human because there's nothing there either. So it leaves him in this state of just utter confusion. He's trying to dance between two worlds, and he really can't do that. And through the next episode, he still tries to do that and fails miserably.
You ever think the we, that's to say our kind?
We, our kind. He tries to get Lestat on his side of things, tries to butter him up, and even though Lestat goes along with it, he knows that Louis's heart isn't really in it. So they find the perfect victim, and even then Louis can't eat the person, he can't kill him.
Eat! Before your reason or his heart fails us.
Louis is disgusted by the way Lestat kills, and Lestat is disgusted by the fact that Louis won't. I was so indignant, so enraged and mystified by Lestat's affair with Antoinette. Did he always just have this wandering eye? When him and Louis were happy at the beginning, there was a moment where he was checking out this woman outside of the house, and I was like, but you're happy with Louis, so why would you need to be looking elsewhere? So is it serial cheater, can't do monogamy, or is it the pressures and the issues within their relationship? When you look at it, when you force yourself to examine the infidelity, our first shot of Antoinette, the first time we see her, is after we see Lestat's disgust as Louis eats the cat. It's all over his face. Like I said, the true revulsion of Louis's choices, which is to reject being a vampire, to reject his very nature, the gift that Lestat gave him.
My libido was not what it had been. I understood the indulgence. I let it happen.
When Louis talks about it, he's blaming himself. He really sounds like one of those, my poor Louis sounds like one of those wives, blaming himself for his husband stepping out. And he says his libido isn't what it used to be, but I think it's about so much more than sex.
Is the animal market still open?
Enjoy yourselves.
With Louis and Lestat, they both have their own way of punishing each other. Lestat never loved Antoinette. She was in a different, more sordid way, his Miss Lily. He could go talk to her. She was a distraction from the problems in his marriage. And she's also someone who was willing to do anything. She was a very amoral person. Whereas Louis had his limitations. He was held together, well, holding himself together by what he believed to be his morality.
I favor the feline population of New Orleans.
Is that some of the missing pieces of understanding what was going on when Lestat had his affair with Antoinette? Or is that me trying to romanticize Lestat and Louis's relationship and trying to explain away this huge gaping hole that is in their marriage?
Aren't I enough? Don't laugh.
How do we explain this away? It's a true moment of vulnerability, and he embarrasses him, shames him by laughing loudly in his face. Louis doesn't express his feelings or confess his love to Lestat that we see, although we can understand in that moment that Lestat might have been delighted that Louis was jealous. All he's done is ensure that Louis won't feel comfortable opening up.
We're communicating so much better now, no?
How wrong he was, because he put them, mainly himself, in a precarious situation, which he realizes in that moment.
So I can whoever I want.
Of course. Of course. Of course.
Lestat's reaction to Louis potentially having a lover is very different. He's saying that he doesn't mind, but he clearly does mind. This whole scene, he's shaking his head while saying, of course. And he repeats it several times. Of course, of course, of course.
Jonah, naked.
When Jonah appears, Lestat notices something right away. Is he reading Jonah's thoughts? Is he just noticing the energy between the two of them? But he catches that moment. He's watching.
Well, what's he like? He's a lot.
Just the imagery of Lestat following him to the bayou, just watching him, jealous, heartbroken, absolutely distraught, witnessing Louis have this connection with someone. And then less than 24 hours later, despite not saying anything about it, maybe planning to keep it secret, or wanting Louis to confront him, he can't help but have this very Lestat outburst. And the thing about it is, it's so in your face. It's so Lestat, like you can't hide from it. He brings all these army boys back to the house. He's like, now I know you have a type. Like his jealousy can't just be normal jealousy. You can't just speak to him about it, be like, I'm upset about it. No, it drives him to this point of madness. He brings them all back, throwing this party, singing, playing at the piano, loud, boisterous, just being completely Lestat, just out of control when it comes to his love for Louis. The way he like grabs him and spins him around, that was so funny. He's like, come over here. And he's like singing loudly. And then he mind warps them all to leave, and they have their confrontation.
I heard your heart stamping! You watched the whole thing like some creeper! And then I watched you pull over and drain a dog and run down an alleyway for 2 more rats! This is not a life! That's because you took my life!
And there it is. And there it is.
I think it's fair to say that Louis is a premature vampire. In later episodes, he says all vampires are born from trauma, as if it's a fact. No, it's just a fact for his life. Louis's reluctancy with so many aspects of his vampire life are likely as a result of it being forced upon him to a degree.
About to lose the last fucking thing I care about.
Before they can even resolve all of that, Louis is still pulled back into the human elements, the things he supposedly cares about more than Lestat. Like more problems on problems for the two of them. And the Library of Confusion is back. It's not about the money. It is about the money.
We don't need the money.
It's not about that.
2 seconds later.
Nickels, dimes, quarters.
So it is about the money.
And this is the moment everything comes bubbling to the surface. It's the injustice, the blue laws that were implemented. He's practically exiled from his family, losing the club, the last tether to his humanity.
You said I'm arrogant?
He unleashes all his rage. It's very Lestat in the church, and he finally says it.
I'm a vampire.
As I said, when Louis kills like this, there is something enjoyable about it, something satisfying and vigilante-like, in contrast to how Lestat is portrayed as sadistic and cruel when he kills. It's just as violent, and Louis does what he has such disdain for Lestat doing. He puts it on full display.
Maybe you saw it coming and didn't stop me.
He does something completely outrageous. He flips it, turns it around on Lestat, and lets him know that this thing between us, our relationship, it might not be lifelong.
And that's why you and me ain't ever gonna work.
The unhealthy parts of their relationship isn't just solely Lestat being responsible. The two of them keep taking chunks out of each other.
That's why you're always gonna be alone.
Alone when his father and his brothers locked him up. Alone when Magnus threw himself into the fire. Alone in his marriage. He must genuinely be questioning, does Louis love me? Will he ever love me? What can I do to make him love me?
My light. My Claudia.
What's so crazy about that moment is him going back to Lestat after abandoning him. And then he's just begging and pleading with him. I'm focusing on season 1, even though I would love to get into season 2 and what that scene really was. But it's that moment of him wanting something and Lestat choosing, being unable not to give it to Louis. And we have seen that.
How can I say no to you?
Lestat has this inability to say no to Louis. From the beginning, in their relationship, when they had that mishap about the racist guy, Lestat couldn't even go to sleep before resolving it with Louis and being like, what can I do to make it better? Like, what can I do? Tell me anything you want me to do. And he said it in that moment. He said, human and vampire business never mix well together, but how can I say no to you? So he lets him baby trap him with Claudia. And even though he knows that there will be disastrous consequences, he can't say no at the potential, the idea of Louis truly loving him. And I believe Louis already does, but he does keep himself, a part of himself, like pulled back from Lestat that makes him feel so insecure and feel the need to go to any lengths to keep him. And we see that with their beautiful daughter being born, Claudia. He calls her his redemption, his light, his Claudia, and his love for her is so great that it can cover a multitude of problems for the relationship that he has with Lestat, for his complex feelings about his life as a vampire.
Looks like she takes after me.
She's literally his newborn baby. Businessman Louis is all but forgotten. He is on maternity leave. And this works out great for Lestat, who never would want to let Louis go. You know, he's constantly told Louis, I'm your family. And he hasn't had that reciprocated in Louis agreeing or believing him. He's always gone back to, you know, Grace and his mother. But through this moment, when they have Claudia, it's the first time Louis really vocalizes, like, yes, we are a family.
We're a family?
Yeah.
You should see Lestat's face. He lights up.
But with no secrets.
All right.
He's so happy to hear that. He's like, oh, finally, yes, we're a family. He doesn't even know what to do with it.
Claudia! Claudia!
So I don't know if anyone had this question that I did. Why didn't Louis just start home rats? Why did they go and hunt someone out? Like, the two of them, you're both grown vampires. What are you doing? So we're introduced to the dynamics between them. We have Uncle Les, of course. She couldn't call him Daddy Lestat because the whole world would have been looking at them crazy. And they have their own bond in a way, even though we don't see as much of it. She talks about how they call it kill juice. And then we've got Claudia and Daddy Lou sharing a coffin, so there's that sweetness.
Rules are fools, Daddy Lou.
Keeping you safe, Lil Wade.
Despite how anything else transpires, and despite how anyone else feels about it, they were happy. Claudia says it herself. You joined a happy home. There were years where it was the three of them, and they were just laughing, enjoying each other. And any problems that they have were easily resolved. You know, her two dads together, anytime they had issues, she was able to jump in and just make it better. There was so much love between the three of them, and that's something that can't be taken away. I think when anger and resentment comes in a family dynamic, you forget the times when you were most joyful and most comforted by one another. And I think that's what happens, especially with Claudia and with Louis. But the moment was there, it was real. And in that time together, they were a family, and they created something so strong that all three of them struggled to let it go. The turning point of it all, I would love to understand why the hell Lestat was so cruel to Claudia when it came to her first love. He already knew that changing Claudia as a child would be something impossible, that she would not be able to overcome these feelings and she would not be able to grow any bigger than what she was. And obviously, she didn't understand that, but Lestat did. So why did he treat his daughter this way? Why couldn't he have any empathy for her? And he like grabs her face and makes her watch the first love she's ever had burn, as though he's angry at her. And it's like, what makes him do that? Rather than be like, okay, I knew this was going to happen all along because we turned you as a child. He chooses the most brutal and cruel fashion he can to push her from her adolescence, like push her through her puberty. Like it's just so uncalled for. What is Lestat's reason? She hadn't been getting in the way at that time period. She'd actually been bringing them together. So why did he behave this way? Lestat is someone who doesn't want to be abandoned. He craves love and he wants Louis' love. So why would he not understand that Claudia would want love too, that she wasn't going to be a preteen or a teenager forever, that her wanting someone for herself was as natural as him wanting someone for himself. Like,
Please.
You drained him dry. Now go on. Clean up after yourself.
One thing that people struggle to, many things, but one thing that people struggle to acknowledge is the depth of abuse that Lestat subjected Claudia to. She was very sheltered. I think when they go to the funeral of Louis' mother and she makes a comment about the body smelling and that she hasn't been around people, that's right. People forget Claudia was changed at a very young age. All she remembers is some of her aunt, and then all she has in her mind is Louis and Lestat. And the years they've been together, they have just been the three of them. She hasn't had the experiences that they have. Lestat was changed later. Louis was changed later. They had their experiences as humans, and then they were changed into vampires. Well, whereas Claudia is changed right at the beginning. So her vampire nature, her even response to like humans and her disregard for them, it's something that has been instilled and taught by Louis and Lestat, the two of them together. Claudia is driven to madness.
Where are they?
You gonna let him do this to me?
And Louis is not innocent. Yeah, I'm coming for you, Louis, my favorite guy, my, blind princess. You are the problem too. You allowed this abuse. The person who facilitates the abuse, who turns a blind eye to the person who's been victimized, they're almost worse than the person who subjected you to the abuse in the first place.
I remember the night I was made, but then why'd you take me home? Why not a hospital?
That's the one thing about growing up. Childhood might paint your parents with the brush of perfection, and then you get older and you come to some realizations. And that's what's happening with Claudia. She's looking at these two guys and she's like, you guys were so messed up.
Her absence would lay bare who we were without her, a simmering pot of resentments.
It makes sense that Claudia would want to seize back her life. This isn't defiance. It's not a temper tantrum. She's seeking freedom. Meanwhile, Louis and Lestat should be seeking a divorce attorney because it is that bad.
As if they're thinking like yourself on fire, see if you would notice.
Pulling rats from under the newspapers. It was the darkest time of their relationship. And it feels as though Louis specifically was letting Lestat know what's going on the outside is what's really happening on the inside. The house has completely, it's a mess, it's shambles, because that's how I feel on the inside. I feel broken, I feel completely distraught. Like I'm not put together without Claudia. And he wants Lestat to know that. I mean, could Lestat have picked up a brush himself and tidied that place up? Yeah, you be the judge. I'm like, if you don't like the mess, then tidy the mess.
You draw me into your gloom.
And Louis' depression just gets worse when he runs into Grace and she says, you're not my Louis. She shows him the grave. And honestly, I think it's the same music that played when Louis watched the final sunrise with Paul plays as he looks at his grave. His human life, everything he knew, just truly being over. It's like he keeps dying again and again, and it's so painful to witness. And when Claudia says this, it's so beautiful but so tragic. She says, I spent time
following Louis and Lestat with no obvious sense of why I follow them, other than meaning slowly disintegrates without them.
When she wrote that, she could have said, I follow Louis. She didn't have to include Lestat, but she loved him as well.
The prodigal daughter. Apology not accepted.
With Claudia being gone 7 years and the state of the relationship, I understand Lestat's resentment, but it's like, you caused this. Baby, be mad at yourself.
What I've read is lies, then tell me what's true.
So much of their relationship becomes engulfed in what is happening with Claudia, yes, but it exposes what was already there. Lestat was given many opportunities to explain the truth about vampires, but instead he mocks her pain, he makes fun of her being assaulted. This is a huge part of the discourse. So many discussions have been had about this singular moment. If we break it down and we still try to integrate some parts of season 2, but staying leveled within the season we're in, he violently attacked Claudia, and Louis reacted. He finally protected Claudia rather than being passive. Lestat tosses Louis. He's pummeling him. He pushes Claudia off. Claudia is so hurt that she's nursing her neck because it was that violent. So the sheriff doesn't fight like this. That's not enough. You've started the attack. And Louis finally stands up for himself and is fighting back.
I'm gonna take this hand here, wrap it around that scrawny neck of yours. Just like you did our daughter.
Lestat brutalizes him. I even feel sick just thinking about the grasp that he had on him by the throat. It's a scene I struggle to rewatch. I can't. I have to skip it because He drags him by his neck across the ground.
It's Uncle Les now, suddenly.
Claudia begs, calling him Uncle Les. She's pleading to him, trying to protect Louis. She gave him a chance to stop, but instead he continues. He bites him and then pulls him into the air. And Louis is just so terrified. You see that all over his face, the fear, the not knowing that Lestat had these powers. And so for someone to have that upper hand on you, he's just so afraid.
Say at the start, I am never going to love you.
They're in two different places as they're in the sky. What Lestat is actually saying to him and what Louis is experiencing. He's, in this moment, he's a victim of domestic violence. And Lestat is trying to address his own fears, his own insecurities. Why don't you love me? You've never loved me. I've tried to get you to love me. It's like, we're not on even footing at this moment. This isn't a conversation had over coffee. You're holding him in the sky and you're threatening him. And he is trembling, literally trembling, wanting you to just stop and leave him alone.
Anything for you.
And then Lestat does it, the most monstrous thing that he can do. He drops him and he completely breaks his body. Now I'm going to do the flip side. I will not ignore Lestat because the show is so beautifully interwoven together. So who would I be to ignore just the layers behind it because I'm mad at Lestat? He says, so you're going to leave me? Like, are you going to leave me? He's beaten, he's bloodied, he's bruised, and all he can think about is,
You're gonna leave me?
That's how his anger even came up in that moment. Claudia says, let's find vampires worthy of your love. Lestat has felt that Louis doesn't love him. So hearing that,
Let's be vampires worthy of your love.
And to hear that it's because he's not worthy, that there is someone out there who Louis would give his love to, he loses his mind. Like, I sat with you all these years through this abhorrent mess of our lives. And you, at the first sight of seeing her, you're just going to leave me. That's how little I mean to you. You can't get him to love you, so you break him instead. Ugh.
You only beat me the one time, officer.
Daniel sees it for exactly what it is. And strange as it sounds, through taking care of him after that abuse, Claudia brings back the normality to Louis' life. Like I said, either one of them could have cleaned up that home at any point, Louis, Lestat, but everything starts to go back to place once Claudia returns.
Don't move it.
I didn't.
And it's so sweet to have her look after him. And there's that shift in their dynamic where she's decided to come home, she's decided to come back to Louis, but she doesn't want to be his daughter. And even though she will always be his daughter, she wants to be respected. She wants to be seen as an adult. She won't be seen that way in the real world. They'll always see her as a child. So the least that Louis can do for her is accept this new role. It's interesting that Claudia says, they made me to be his sister. I think she's completely wrong about that. You were always their daughter. You weren't made to be his sister. He needed a child. He needed a future. He needed something. He'd even said it to Lestat at one point. I'll never have children of my own. But for you, Claudia, what you needed was to be his sister. Because being his sister and no longer his daughter, even though you were trapped in this physical body that made you a child, mentally, that change of the dynamic helped you get closer to adulthood. And we see her dressing completely differently than how she did before.
And Lestat's relentless determination began to crack my considerable armor.
But here's the thing. Louis and Lestat seem equally addicted to each other, unable to escape their love for one another. And I think Louis downplays it in his retelling of their love story. But there are moments from Lestat's point of view when he recounts something that Lestat said to him. And I think, well, we didn't see that very much. He's like, there's no one
As loving, as dedicated, as thoughtful.
We don't see much of that. You just see glimpses of it, pockets of it. And I think it's the same as when he met Daniel in San Francisco, that he distorted the truth of their love story that, you know, oh, he couldn't stand Lestat. Oh, he was this, he was that, he was the other. And then now, in the present, he's getting closer to the truth, but not all the way there. Potentially because of Armand's mind warping, lies, confusion that he's clouded Louis with, or also because Louis just struggles to reveal that truth of how much he loved Lestat. He's still struggling with it.
I know he's upstairs. I can see his silhouette.
But after the DV, you still see he wants to be with Lestat. From the moment his eye finally, you know, he's had 5 weeks blind in one eye. When his vision starts to come back, what's he reading? He's reading a book and the chapter says marriage. It's like, what is he thinking about? What's on his mind? Always Lestat. When he comes and he wants to give Louis a gift and Lestat says, oh, I can see his silhouette. It's like, yeah, he was watching. He throws out his coffin in anger, but there's still love there.
I'm nothing without you.
And when Lestat approaches them with the car that he's bought, you still see that between the two of them. Louis pulled back, he's a bit closed off, but in a way that's more bashful than I hate you and I never want to see you again. He's unsure, but it's clear in just their body language that he does want Lestat, and the idea of him leaving forever.
I'll live your life forever.
He doesn't look too pleased with that. So when he sends him
his first composition in 100 years.
For Louis, my muse, Lestat, come to me. Those 3 words have so much deep meaning to them. From season 1,
come to me, Louis,
to season 2, when it's used against Louis. There's a reason why, we won't go into it too much, but why at the trial that hurt so much, because of the weight of those 3 words.
Louis is soaking wet.
He swims over and reclaims Lestat, and he does it in a messy, toxic way, which shows it's the 2 of them in this unhealthy relationship. It's the 2 of them that don't want to get out of the cycle that they're in. Can they improve it? Probably they can do it in slightly a different way, but it's something that they love, they're enthralled by, they're excited by, and I don't think it's changing, as we see, anytime soon. But when we look at it, this complicated, beautiful, toxic relationship, do we give Lestat too much credit? That's what I want to ask myself. Too much exposition of explaining away his actions. Because the song he makes, Louis returns to him. But my question is, why did he go to Antoinette? Why was he with Antoinette at all? Why would you go to a person who was such a cause of conflict in your relationship? Why not during these 6 years was he not begging and celibate? That would have made sense to me. And despite him saying how sorry he was, I don't think he came back as someone who needed to truly be humbled. His softest moment is when he promises Louis that he didn't hurt Paul, and I felt that, but it's as though he's still too proud for me, and that in that moment, it's like there's too much pride for what you did, for what has transpired between the 3 of you as a family. There should be more contrition. Where's the contrition?
I'd like to ask a question, if that's amenable to you both. That's why I need you.
I'm personally confounded how they ended up in the same place they were before. Lestat betrays, Claudia resents, and Louis turns a blind eye. The power dynamic shifts quickly back to Lestat being in control of both of them, as though it never shifted in the first place.
Kill Antoinette.
How little their request was in comparison to his actions. And let's look deeper into what keeping Antoinette means. Claudia is alone, no companion of her own, and yet Lestat, without thought, makes Antoinette into a vampire. After everything that he's put her through, rather than make her a companion, he casually creates another vampire and disgustingly taunts her about being assaulted.
You're not my type. I like a fuller figure.
Stop!
How did Charlie taste? Like the love you'll never really know? He thinks of you often. Bruce.
Claudia has every reason to hate Lestat and every justification for wanting him dead. Louis, on the other hand, is in a deeply depressive state, something that Lestat says he's aware of.
He's very fragile right now.
Louis is so numb to everything. But what is Lestat doing about it? Cheating on him with the same person that he's been betraying him with for most of their marriage. There's a huge difference between random people through the years and having a consistent lover who you've now turned to forever be immortal. A lover who is white and a woman who can be out in public with you and not sit in the back like your husband and your daughter have to. So did Lestat deserve what they had planned? Yes, emphatically yes. After he choked Claudia, after he physically broke Louis, after years to reflect on his actions and experience life without the two people he loves the most, he said,
I've changed. Let me prove it to you.
But he didn't. He worked his way back into their lives with gifts and false promises and then reverted to the same cycle. But worse, they became his prisoners and they all knew it. That's what makes it more terrifying. So the mindset that he was in during that time, what would Lestat do to them if they tried to leave? Would it be like last time or would it be worse?
Back in your cage, sweetheart.
Thus the plan to kill Lestat commences. Whether Louis says it or not, it's evident to both Claudia and himself Lestat is a relic and he needs to be dealt with. In the moments leading up to the plan, Lestat knows exactly what they are planning and does nothing to stop it, very much in line with the twisted nature of their love for each other. He wants to watch Louis, he wants to see what Louis will decide, and you can see the pain in his face knowing that Louis has made his choice, that he's made his decision to go forward with the plan. As we analyze Louis' behavior, he's very much the unwitting, mindless accomplice.
I can't do that. I'll lose myself in him.
Not being informed with much of the plan because he might lack the conviction to follow through with it. Claudia, on the other hand,
You must think me an
idiot.
Very much her mother's daughter, stays 5 steps ahead of Lestat while allowing him to believe that she's trailing behind 3. Finally, checkmate. And it's time for Louis to take center stage. And what does he do? In his retelling to Daniel in the present, it's like they're back in the 70s and he's unable or unwilling to get to the truth. Lucky for us, Daniel isn't the boy or the reporter he once was.
You knew it, Louis. The biggest rat eater of them all. Enough blood in them to bring back the dead, especially one in a trunk with locks on the inside.
Locks that trigger from the inside.
Claudia wasn't the one who wanted to show Lestat mercy. It wasn't the two of them filled with regret. It was him. It was all him. Louis cradles him, he cries out and does the very thing we and he despise Lestat for.
I said no!
He attacks Claudia.
Was it raining, Louis?
Killing Lestat revealed the most uncomfortable truth of all, that nothing could compete with his love for him. Louis chose Lestat over Claudia. For someone who struggled so much to explain the complexity and the depth of his love for Lestat, it's on full display in that moment. His final and greatest act of love is putting Lestat in his coffin.
Put me in my coffin, Louis, Louis.
So we're at the end of the season. Daniel has finally pulled back the curtain, but in doing so, he discovers Armand behind it, meaning the story is only just beginning. Okay, let me know your thoughts and opinions about season 1 of Interview with the Vampire, Louis and Lestat's relationship, Louis' point of view, Lestat's point of view. What side do you lean towards, or are you just Team Claudia? And I'll see you in my next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.